video. So this is the second in the recent in the car videos. It's actually like number 14 or something like that. 14 of these things of you watching me talking to myself as I drive. Anyway, I want to talk today about game development because on my drive home for lunch today, I actually had kind of a little revelation about this game that I'm working on tentatively called Project Universe. I regret choosing that name because I can't abbreviate it any time because the initials would be PU, and you know, everybody's inner 5-year-old would find that amusing, including me. So I got to come up with an actual name, you know, later on in life. But right now I call it, you know, Project Universe without abbreviation. So if you're just watching this video for the first time and you have no idea what the hell Project Universe is, I actually have a Project Universe playlist here on YouTube that you can watch, and it goes over a lot of technical aspects of the project. For the short form here in the car, Project Universe is kind of a it's very much in the vein of old school games such as Trade Wars, which was a BBS game from long time before many people were born, and also combined with another old school game called Starflight. Now in Trade Wars, your goal, your primary activity was to roam around the universe, docking at different space stations and buying one of 3 different commodities that you would then take to another station and sell for profit. This is kind of not really a new concept. There's a lot of great games out there that follow this particular mold. Trade Wars was a BBS game, which means electronic bulletin board system, which is what we used to connect to before the internet using our annoying, screeching dial-up modems. And you would log in and you would have a certain number of moves per day that you could take to fly around the universe and make a profit. There was a whole lot more to it than just that, but that was kind of what you found yourself doing the most when you log in to play. Trade Wars is still around. I actually have a couple seat license to Trade Wars itself, and the scene has evolved. Actually, now they have special telnet clients that will do a lot of the trading for you, which kind of takes, you know, the fun out of it. It kind of takes the whole point of the game really out of the game. But I used to play Trade Wars a lot back in the BBS days, and I wanted to do something like that because that's kind of it's kind of a mechanic that you just can't write a guide for, really. Especially when you start talking about making the markets dynamic. One of the things about Trade Wars, and like other trading sims, is that the less inventory that a shop has to sell you, the more expensive it's going to be for you to buy. Simply because, you know, we're talking about a law of supply and demand here. So if they don't have that much to offer, they're going to want to, you know, hold on to it for longer. It's a scarcity thing here. When the resource is scarce, you know, it's more valuable. Consequently, you know, when a station has low inventory and they're buying that particular resource, they're going to pay more. So, you know, the idea being that you want to find a station that you can dock at and buy a resource that they're selling that has very low quantities because, no, I'm sorry, that has very high quantities, because when the quantity is high, they've got, you know, an overabundance. So they're going to want to offload this stuff at a cheap price. So you're going to want to buy at a station that has a very high quantity and very low buying price, and you're going to want to take that and sell it at a station that has a very low quantity and a very high, you know, purchase price. What they're willing to you know, buy it from you. So there's that aspect of Trade Wars that I really liked. It was kind of really a forge your own way. There was no way to predict it. There was really no way to predict it. And I really like that aspect, because you kind of really get the feeling of accomplishment when you dock at a station and all of a sudden find that, oh my God, this place is selling an item for incredibly low, and I know where I can sell it for incredibly high. Fantastic feeling. Starflight came later. Starflight was, well, I think I had Starflight in the Commodore 64. And I actually own an original copy of Starflight 2. Actually, I own Starflight 1 and 2 through GOG.com. And let me tell you something. You go back and you play this game, you will end up ripping your hair out. It does not age well, but my fond memories, were of a game that had you exploring the galaxy. It was essentially all about exploration. So you get in your ship, and you had to mind your fuel levels, and you could travel out into the stars, and you'd be looking for star systems with planets. And once you found a planet, you could land on the planet, and you could scan around, and you could find valuable resources that you would collect and bring back. Obviously, there's more to it than that. I'm not really sure how much more to it there is, because I haven't really played it in 20, almost 30 years. So, yeah, I'm not really sure what else there is involved. I'd have to go back and look at it. But again, you know, the feeling that I have, the memories that I have, are of, you know, the exploration aspect. You get out there and you're running on limited fuel, so you got to make every exploration minute count. You get out there, you find a planet, you land, you have to scan it from space to find out if it's worthwhile landing. You know, when you land, you could find resources, you could find ruins, you could find aliens, and you take samples and you bring them back, and, you know, exploration for fun and profit. There really aren't too many games out there these days that you can actually go out and explore, like really explore. I mean, looking around, new to you is not real exploration. New to you is something that can be covered by a guide, and that's kind of what we've got these days is you know, people getting out there, doing things, writing stuff down, and then canonizing it, putting it up online for other people to find, so that they don't have to do the legwork. That's bullshit, in my opinion, because what's the point of playing if you're just going to follow somebody else's instructions? So, you know, I want to see if I can bring back that kind of idea of exploration. What am I going to find out there? I haven't quite gotten to that part yet, but focusing on the trading aspect is where I've been, you know, the basket I've been putting my eggs in recently. First couple attempts to tackle this project have been kind of disastrous. The very first aspect that I kind of got mired in was the data aspect, because all of these games are about data. What you see is really driven by the data. And in order to have a game where you're talking about, you know, buying low, selling high, going to all kinds of space stations around the universe, all of that is essentially data. You could play that in a command line, which is essentially what Trade Wars was. You had to connect via, you know, telnet, and that allowed you to play. So if you want to put a nice front end on it, that's where Unity comes in. But you know, for the most part, everything's about data. So I focused a heck of a lot of time on data. How to save it, how to recall it, how to generate it, what I needed to seed and what could be generated, you know, when a player starts a new game. And I spent so much time going through different iterations on data storage, data formats. I've done, you know, portable databases. I've done static online databases. I've done flat files using JSON or you know, encrypted comma-separated values. Anything that I could think of that would be efficient and, you know, relatively simple, but somewhat powerful. And it just took up so much time that I got bored, more or less, with the project, just because I was making no progress beyond data. Eventually, I did come up with a scheme that I was able to kind of canonize there and you know, modularize, so I could plug it into another attempt in which I was messing around with user interface. One of my perennial issues is that I need to be able to see my vision in action, okay? Which meant that if I'm talking about making a game, I feel that I have to see it as a game. I gotta have the graphics, the visuals, I gotta have, you know, the avatar being the spaceship, and I gotta have the skybox, and I gotta have some kind of a model for a space station in order to, you know, test the underlying systems, which have absolutely nothing to do with visuals. When I got to the point where I needed to test a user interface, though, that was all visual. And I had originally started using a third-party package, which kind of, they opted to discontinue working on that package, but thankfully Unity finally came out with its integrated, you know, visual user interface system, so we don't have to deal with it in code. And, you know, I using this third-party app package, I managed to create some kind of a system where you could buy and sell and move items into and out of a cargo hold. But again, that's where it kind of died on the vine. I got tired or confused, or I spent way too much time focusing on the wrong thing. So this time around, knowing what I know from my previous failed attempts, I said, screw it. I'm not going to deal with all of this data wackiness. A lot of stuff I'm just going to hard code into the application itself. Meaning that if there's any kind of problem down the road where I need to modify some data, I'm going to have to issue a patch anyway, because we're going to have to learn to deal with the new data that, you know, is changed. So I might as well just bury the data into the application itself. And if I need to change it, well, it's going to have to be part of a greater patch, which changes, you know, fixes other things. And, you know, it's just going to be something that has to be done. So, you know, that allowed me to skip a lot of the BS that I had dealt with before with, you know, coming up with data constructs, putting them into a stopgap application that allowed me to write them to a database file, which I would then read on new game instantiation. It's all just into the application. So I skipped this, so that I made that decision, and that is all in there. Some representative data is in there to work with. Second of all, ditching the reliance on visuals, because that, more than anything else, I think disheartened me. I've tried to find free stuff on the Unity Asset Store to prototype with, but it's been really anemic. Also, I'm running into the weirdness of game development, where the orientation of the model, or how it's imported into the engine, you know, has an effect. I imported a free spaceship model, and it came in, you know, flipped over. And when I tried to get it to move, it moved in a really weird direction that I wasn't expecting. And I didn't know how to get it out of that. So I said, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to make generic prefabs. So we're going to make, you know, NPCs are spheres, and the player is a capsule, and a jump gate is going to be a square, a cube. So I just kind of went with that. Plain and simple. Didn't focus on the visuals. I don't care. So initially what I had done was I set up a player using a dummy asset and created a station that they could dock at. And I did have to work with some of the user interface elements, because I wanted to put the new user interface system, you know, through a couple paces to make sure that I could work with it, or that I could come up with a decent framework, a pattern that I could use for, you know, the future. You know, creating an empty game object, attaching the canvas to that, so I could activate and deactivate the game object, turn on and turn off the interface, you know, as needed, and then to be able to update individual data elements with data from the global data store, because that's essentially what's going to need to happen. You go into a marketplace, you're going to need to see a list of all of the items that are at that marketplace. You're going to need to see their prices. You're going to need to see their quantities. All of that has to come from the database, but it has to be reflected in the user interface. So I needed to make sure that I had a concept on how to handle that. But after that, I got that all kind of settled. I wanted to work on NPCs. So I spent 2 or 3 weeks, actually it's more like 3 or 4 weeks, working on NPC movement patterns, which I kind of completed recently for 3 of the initial 4 NPC types. The merchant, the miner, and the police. The last one, of course, is pirates. And they're kind of a special thing that requires me to understand how I'm going to handle combat. But right now, they're kind of on the back burner. So, having the movement patterns done, now I'm going to be moving on towards simulating market conditions. And that includes simulating how goods move under the care of NPCs, because they're going to be trading stuff too, and they're going to be the mechanism through which we simulate, you know, market normalization, meaning other people are doing the same thing you're doing. So one day you may be buying from a station, and then you find out the next day that, well, there's not enough, so now you have to sell to the station. So I'm working on that, and that's also going to play into the pricing mechanism, which I have yet to figure out, as well as, you know, a universal event system. Like there's a plague in this system, meaning that items of a particular type are more in demand. There's a war going on, so now you have to, you know, bring arms to this system or that system. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now, moving goods around. So, you know, the revelation being that when I've actually gotten the focus on specific systems, this is what I want to do, this is how it has to work, and I stopped focusing on stupid stuff like data persistence or visuals right now. You know, this is exactly the time when I should not be focusing on those things. I've been able to make significantly more progress now than I have in the past, and that's very heartening. I'm enjoying it a lot more. I don't know if this is going to be the most efficient project ever, but I definitely want to get it to the point where the player can jump in, can move between sectors using the jump gates, where they can dock at a station, where they can buy items, where they can sell items, where they can see NPCs going about their business, and where we have the simulation of the market so that it looks like NPCs are trading when players are not. So the player should be able to see the ramifications of having a populated universe while they try to, you know, make a living on their own. So far so good. Check out the Project Universe playlist here if you want to see some of the older stuff and some of the newer stuff. And also I've got some blog posts about it as work progresses on levelcap.com.